Most people don't understand the actual source of their unhappiness. So, what they do to become happier doesn't work. This is a quote directly from our special guest today, and I think it is extremely profound. I mean, how can we expect to become happier if we don't know what's causing us to be unhappy in the first place? As an actuarial, nonprofit, and small business leader, our guest knows the struggle to maintain happiness. He has been there, and he will share his thoughts on how you can become happier. Hi, I am Tim Fitzpatrick with Rialto Marketing, where we believe marketing shouldn't be difficult. All you need is the right plan. I am super excited to have Steve Fredlund from Small Business with me today. Steve, welcome and thank you for being here, man.
Thanks so much, Tim. My pleasure. I'm excited for the conversation.
Yes, I'm excited to dig into this, man. Happiness is, gosh, we all want to be happy, right?
We hope so. That's my premise. I do.
That's the goal. Sometimes we get off course, so hopefully, if there are people watching, listening today, we can help them get back on course. Before we do that, I want to ask you some rapid fire questions. Help us get to know you a little bit. Are you ready to jump into this?
I'm ready. Rapid fire away.
Okay, awesome. I love it. So, when you're not working, how do you like to spend your time?
Disc golfing.
Disc golfing. Okay, I love it. What's your hidden talent?
Juggling.
How many things can you juggle, and what do you juggle?
It's not real impressive. I used to be able to juggle 4 tennis balls at one time, and then be able to do like back and forth with another person, like up to 6. But right now, three tennis balls or 3 of anything, pretty much.
Okay. No chainsaws or anything, though.
No chainsaws, but people,
Okay.
I'm an actuary, so I'm supposed to be super boring. So even the fact that I juggle astounds people.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Really know yourself, know your strengths, know what makes you tick. Just really being self-aware.
What's one thing about you that surprises people?
I think a lot of people are surprised that I'm an introvert. I'm not surprised. When you hear the word actuary, you're not surprised, but I've done a lot of podcasting and done a lot of public speaking, and people are surprised that I'm actually very introverted. Being around people I love, but it drains me to no end.
What does success mean to you?
I would say it's when your world is lined up with what you want it to be, whatever that is. So there's no definition for any one person. It's success is having your life be consistent with what you want.
Where's your happy place?
Rwanda, Africa.
I've never heard that one.
I'm guessing, I was going to say Kivuruga, Rwanda, which is even more so, but I've done humanitarian work in Rwanda, Africa, in this one community called Kivuruga up in northern Rwanda, up near Volcanoes National Park, where the mountain gorillas are. And tell you what, I've been there 4 times, and man, there's no place like it.
What qualities do you value in the people you spend time with?
I would say 2. One is that they are authentic. I don't like hanging out with people that I just feel like aren't genuine, and that they're decent listeners. Because I'm a good listener, and so it's very easy for me to spend an hour and a half just listening to somebody. I need somebody that's going to be mutually beneficial. That's also going to be interested in my story, willing to listen to what I have to say as well.
Love it. So before we jump into talking about happiness here, just tell us a little bit more about what you're doing, Steve. You're speaking, but then you've also got your company, Small Business. Who are you working with? How are you helping folks?
Yeah, I left the corporate world about 3.5 years ago with really the overarching vision of helping communities become more vibrant, especially where I'm in East Central Minnesota, so I've got a real heart for rural, smaller communities that have all these mom and pop shops. And I kind of asked the question, how can I help? How can I contribute the most to helping our communities become more vibrant? And the answer is helping these small businesses. So when I say small business, I mean usually the really small business, the mom and pop shop, the the Main Street, barber shop or whoever it might be, the folks that are really kind of the lifeblood of the community, the people that they live there, work there, play there, eat there, volunteer there, raise their kids there, like the people that are in the community. If I can help them become more successful, I believe the community becomes more vibrant. And so that's why small business was born, really intentionally, with the two smalls, which confuses some people. But the idea is to drive home the point that I'm really helping those folks succeed. And so that might look like coaching, consulting, training, masterminds, meeting facilitation. And I've got a network of people from around the world that have the same passion that I have. And so if it's something that I don't do specifically, I bring somebody in to help those folks out. So that's really the crux of it. But then I also do, like you mentioned, a fair amount of speaking. So I'm a keynote speaker, breakouts, workshops, that sort of thing. Basically looking at whatever problems I've been working on, whatever problems I've solved, like happiness, or
Yeah.
where I have some insights, say, how can I take this message to the world? And so I do that through speaking.
How did you get involved in speaking about happiness?
Yeah, it's an interesting. I've spoken a lot my entire life, primarily because I was like the only actuary in the companies I ever worked for that didn't mind getting up in front of people and talking. So whenever there was a conference or whatever, it was like, hey, well, Steve will talk. And so I got into speaking that way. I really love it. I love that. I love theater. I love all that kind of stuff, which is why people are surprised I'm an introvert. But I think I'm really confident when somebody gives me a platform and says, hey, we want you to share. Like, I'm very confident there. I'm not going to bud my way in, but when somebody gives me a platform. So speaking has always been part of what I've done. And really at the core, I'm a problem solver. Like, I consider myself a multi-passionate serial problem solver. Like, that's what if I could just get paid every day to just solve problems, I'd be happier than anybody.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I really was working on was, why was I unhappy like 15 years ago in different stages of my career where I was just so unhappy, even though my life on paper was so good. And I couldn't figure out what that was. Like, I had just gotten promoted. I was employee of the year. My marriage was great. My kids were great. I was making a bunch of money, but I was miserable. And so as I dug into that and I started sharing that with a few other people, they're like, that makes so much sense. That explains my situation too. And so I solve problems. And then once I get some insights, I feel like I just need to share those. And so I started sharing just the insights I've had about happiness locally at little chamber of commerce meetings here and there. And that kind of grew, and people like, that's a message people need to hear. And so I've been sharing that more broadly since then.
Well, let's dig into it then. I why is happiness such an important business topic? I know some people may not really think of it that way, but man, we spend more time at work than we do anywhere else. So
It's huge. It's a huge business issue because people that are happier are more engaged on the job. And I know, employee engagement is sort of that holy grail that everybody's after, right? We all want engaged employees because engaged employees are 27% more productive, and the retention is so much better. And so really happiness at work becomes an employee engagement issue, becomes a productivity issue, becomes a retention issue. And so it really becomes a bottom line issue. And
yeah,
when I'm talking about happiness, I'm not necessarily talking about, hey, I'm going to run around with a red hat and be super funny or whatever. Like, that might be your thing. I'm talking about that core, authentic happiness that we have as people
yeah,
when we are at work. And things like work-life balance, like, I understand the premise of it, but I think that has done a bit of a disservice for a lot of people because we tell them, hey, as long as you have work-life balance, your job can really suck. You can be really unhappy. You can be miserable. But as long as as long as you have that 40 to 50 hours of terribleness balanced with some goodness, things are okay. And I think ultimately that leads to employee disengagement. And so
yeah.
this is about, how can we, in our jobs, while we're running a business, while we're in a career, whatever it is, how can we actually find more happiness in the middle of our work?
Yeah. So you're talking about in the middle of our work. Um, do you find some people have a hard time being happy while they're working towards reaching something? Like they feel like
Yeah.
I'll be happy when I hit that point.
Yes.
Do a lot of us fall into that trap?
A lot of us do fall into that trap, and the reality is, a lot of times when we get there, we're not happy anyway, because I
Yeah,
think we view happiness as the accumulation of something.
yeah,
And whether that's time, money, cars, promotion, title, we think that's going to make us happier. And I know this is a cliche, but it typically doesn't, because if you're kind of the type of person where you're wired by, what makes me happy is out there and I'm going to pursue that and I'm going to achieve that. When you get there, it's because that seems so far away. It feels like a big jump. But by the
Right.
time you get there, it's been such incremental steps that you've already moved on to the next goal that's out there. And so it's always going to be out there. It's always going to be out there. I'm going to be happy that day, someday when, and it's never going to get there because you're always going to keep adjusting that goal versus finding that happiness that says, despite no matter what, the future holds, no matter what situation I'm in, how can I be more happy now? That's going to actually lead you to greater happiness. And so that's why the word contentment is oftentimes almost a better word for some of this too. For some of us that are in the business world or running our own small business, being content is more like right now being happier
Yeah.
with what we have. And so, yeah, I think it is good to have goals. It's good to have visions. It's good to go after those things. But if that is your source of happiness is someday in the future, it's probably always going to be someday in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. So what have you found is the core driver of happiness and unhappiness for a lot of us?
Yeah, because we all define happiness differently, and because we're all wired differently, there's no like one magic thing. Like it kind of drives me nuts when you see these. Here's the 7 things to make you happier. Well, for some people that works because that lines up with their personality. But for a lot of us, we do those 7 things and we're not happier. We think, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
So those things do a disservice. I think it's more complicated and it's more simple than that. I think what drives our happiness is when our reality is lined up with our core identity. When those two things, now because that sounds simple, but it's complicated, right? But whenever we recognize who we are, whenever we're clear on who we are, how we're wired, what we want out of life, not what other people expect of us, not what we think we should want, not what's always been done before, but what do we truly authentically want? What's our core identity? Who am I? What do I want? Where do I want to go? How do I want to get there? Who do I want to get there with? Like when we can really understand who we are as people, and then our reality starts to line up with that, that's the definition of happiness. If you think about anything that you're happy about is probably, like, say you're happy your child graduated high school. Well, that's because what you want to happen is lined up with what's actually happening. Like
Yeah.
it's as simple as that. When you're unhappy that your child's not graduating high school, it's because what you want them graduating is not what reality is. Like our happiness is just when things are lined up with who we are and what we want, and unhappiness is when there's misalignment. So I think the core driver of that then becomes knowing who you are and intentionally making decisions to try to bring your reality into alignment with that. And it's different for everybody because we're all different and we all want different things.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is not a one size fits all
Sorry to say it's
deal
not.
here. But if I'm hearing you correctly, this all really starts with who we are and what we want. So we if we're going to be happy, we need to clearly understand what it is we want.
Yeah. It's clarity, 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 clarity. I know
Yeah.
I love there's a quote attributed to Albert Einstein that said if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes on the problem and 5 minutes on the solution. It's all
Yeah.
about clarifying what the problem is. And it's the same thing with this. If you have to know who you are and what you want authentically, truly, and that can be a really hard question for people to answer. I mean, I ask people why do they have their own small business? They can't answer that, much less who are you? What do you really want out of life? What does that really look like? How do you want to feel when you wake up in 5 years? And people have a hard time answering that, but it's like Alice in Wonderland. If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. And so
Yeah.
if you actually want to be happier, you have to know what makes you happy. And I think we don't, as in general, and I was the same way like 20 years ago, 10 years ago, probably 5 years ago. I didn't really even know what made me happy. I
How
thought I
did
did,
you
but I
how do
didn't.
you how do you go about, like, what's the process for going through and actually discovering that?
Yeah, I think again, that depends on your personality as well. But for me, I can share what worked for me because
Yeah.
I'm an analytical person, and I was always sort of anti these personality tests. Like, what a joke those things were. Like the only time I had to take one was like if I'm getting promoted and they like, okay, we need you to take the disc profile on this one. I'm like, what is the point of that? Don't what's that going to tell you about me? So I was very resistant to those until I realized that understanding how I was wired, especially like my strengths, the role that played in my happiness. And I can tell you the whole story about that. But ultimately, I came to realize that my unhappiness at work was when my job was not lined up with my strengths, with who I
Yeah.
really was. I'd gotten promoted out of a problem solving role into a management role, and I was not even leveraging any of my strengths. And so I realized, oh my gosh, this actually makes a difference. And so for me, what really helped is I actually ended up taking up a bunch of personality tests on my own, and then I would look for the themes in them. What is this telling me about myself? And then that was sort of the path that led me down really truly understanding about myself. And then I surrounded me with a few people that I thought, these guys are going to speak truth in me. They're going to actually be able to ask me the right questions. And I said, hey, you guys, I want to figure out who I am. Like, not who I think I am, not based on my best, but like, who am I really? What do I really want? What honestly gives me life? Not what should give me life, not what people expect to give me life. What truly gives me life? And it was very hard. It was a very difficult process. And so I would say, involve, whatever your style is, but learn stuff yourself, but then surround people with you that aren't going to take your BS crap answers.
Yeah.
They're going to actually dig in and say, I don't think so. You say that makes you happy, but I've seen you in those situations and that doesn't seem to make you happy. Does that really make you happy? And just really kind of dig in and kind of get dirty.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of what worked for me, because it's very easy to kind of, just fly over that answer. Who am I? We all think we know, but I think it's harder than we realize, because we have so much experience and baggage and expectations that have been heaped on us that can be really tough to really know.
Do you think this is one of those things, like, are we really ever done
Probably
doing
not.
this?
Yeah.
Like, you do that initial work, but we're always changing, and
Yeah.
so some of the things we want are changing. But I completely agree with you, and it's funny, we're both analytical. Okay, so we both went about this the same way. I don't know how many personality profiles I've taken, but it's quite a few.
Yeah.
Um, and because they're all slightly different, but
Mhm.
like you, I was looking for those common themes that were coming up. That really did help me better understand myself, my strengths, what I'm good at. But I also think too, it's just like, gosh, this could just be as simple as you go through your day. Like, what are you enjoying doing? What gives
Yeah.
you energy? What's, effortless for you that you're really effective at? Just starting to keep track of some of those things, I think, will start to leave some clues for most of us.
Yeah, I think those are two other things that I would suggest. One is sort of looking back broadly, and one is kind of the real time piece. So that log is phenomenal. It's like if you're dieting or you want to writing down your calories, that sort of thing. But just go through the day exactly when you said. Whether it's if you want to do sequentially, top of every hour, kind of record it, or it's just when you're doing different things, say, okay, here's what I did. Okay, I spent 2 hours working on the spreadsheet to try to optimize a macro or something, and I loved it.
Yeah.
That kind
Yeah.
of thing. And then, spend 30 minutes on phone call with Tim Fitzpatrick, and that
Yeah.
was terrible,
Yeah.
whatever it is, but, kind of putting those things down. So I think that sort of log, because when you're doing it that way, you're not really looking for themes. And then, a week from now, you could even give it to somebody and say, hey, look at this. What themes do you see? But you could see them yourself. Things will
Yeah.
stand out for sure. They'll stand out. And the other one that I loved doing, and I've done this with a few of my clients, is to actually go back over your working world as far back as you can remember, and don't even get into the details of what you're doing, but maybe get into when were you the most happiest in your life.
Yeah.
Kind of chart that out, happy, not happy, whatever. And then look at your jobs. Okay, what were you doing and what was your job for each of those? And then say, how aligned was your job to your strengths? And for me, that was just like the correlation was super high.
Yeah.
Like, I was happiest on my job because I used to blame my manager, I used to blame the company, I used to blame this, that, or the other, or give them praise for why I was happy and sad. When I looked at that, it wasn't really even so much the company or the manager. It was, what was I doing on my job? If I was in a mode of problem solving, I was so happy. If I was in a mode of management, I was unhappy. And I'm like, I didn't even realize this. It really wasn't my manager. It really wasn't my boss, either good or bad. It was
Yeah.
how I was leveraging my strengths on the job. And like, that was just like blew my
Yeah.
mind. Yeah.
So how can we protect or increase our happiness going forward? We need to understand ourselves, know our strengths, know what we want, and try and bring that in alignment with our reality.
Yeah.
What can we do?
I'd say a couple things. Intentionality. So when you're making decisions, about your job, your career, big or small, your family, relationships, moving, whatever it is, be intentional about looking at what you understand about yourself. So you're making that decision in the context of that. So that should at least be an input into your decision is taking this job, moving here. What is that going to do to how I'm wired, who I really am? So use that as another lens to look at things through. We always look at things like in a company, we look at things through the HR lens and the finance lens and the customer service lens. And we look at it through all these different lenses, right?
Yeah.
Well, add that lens of your own personal satisfaction, your own personal happiness to the mix. So that's one way to do it. Another one is surround yourself with the right people that can actually give you advice and then lean on them a little bit and say,
Yeah.
hey, I'm thinking about doing this. I'm thinking about expanding my business to this. I'm thinking about taking on an employee. I'm thinking about, adding a location in Nebraska. What do you think based on what you know about me? How do you think that's going to fit with me long term? And so, having the right people around you that can actually not necessarily hold you accountable, but give insight because
Yeah.
we forget, right? If you're driven like me as a business leader, you're like, man, that sounds like a good idea. I'm going to do that because I think we can expand and blah, 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 blah. And it's going to grow the business. And I forgot, oh yeah, I don't want to manage people,
Yeah.
And so pretty soon I expand and now I need to find somebody to kind of oversee that area. And now I've got to manage them and that sucks. And I'm bad at it.
Yeah.
So I need the people around me to say, well, you don't like managing people. Is this something you can expand and totally offload, or are you going to have to be involved in, making sure they're doing their job kind of stuff? So
Yeah.
I think having the right people around you that can help remember who you are when you forget because you're so driven by expanding the business.
Yeah, I think it's very easy. The way somebody described this to me a week ago really resonated with me. I always talk about like we can't see the forest through the trees, but this guy said, hey, we're too close to the fire, right? It's the same
Mm,
concept. We can't. It's very difficult for us as business owners to think objectively about our business. So getting outside eyes from those that know us well and understand our business, I think is incredibly helpful.
it is. And, for me, my spouse can be that perfect person. It can drive me crazy because I'll talk about something. She'll be like, that doesn't seem like you. And I'll be, "Arr, I want to do it. Like, because I'm like, who are you to tell me what to do? You don't know my business, but she
Yeah.
knows me. But she knows me. Right. And
Yeah.
so she can serve that way, even though I might get like, oh, yeah, that kind of thing. It's good. Those are the kind of people that you need in your life. You don't need all the yes men and the yes women that are thinking that, everything you're doing is great. You need those people that are going to say, well, let's at least think about this. Like you said, you're too close to the fire. Let's
Yeah.
take a step back. Let's look at the fire from over here, from this angle. What's that going to look like? You're going to end up in the fire,
Yeah.
if you do
Yeah.
that. So I like that analogy a lot.
So what I'm taking away from this is there is no, you know, shortcut to happiness, right? There is no one framework, uh, but there is a process, and that process starts with understanding ourselves, what we want, what our strengths are, what our weaknesses, and slowly making our reality in alignment with that.
Yeah, I mean, for
That
me, I'm a math guy, so there's got to be a formula involved, right? But
yeah,
clarity, clarity plus intentionality equals happiness. And
clarity. Okay,
and there
I
are
love
some
it.
people that are more predisposed to happiness than others. Like, sort of my wife, when I first told her I'm going to be talking about happiness because I've started to figure some things out, she's like, well, are you really a happy person? Oh, well, I am. I know, right? But I mean, I'm not your Enneagram 7. I'm not going to run up on stage with a red hat and be kind of the fun guy and all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah,
my happiness is much more internal, authentic for me, contentedness, excited about life kind of thing. And so,
yeah,
yeah, you got to kind of define happiness in different ways. But for me, that's ultimately what it is for everybody is clarity on who you are, plus intentionality around making decisions aligned with that. And that's where happiness comes from. I think about, I know we're probably getting close to time, but I think about like
oh, it's all
our
good.
okay, but our backbone, like our physical backbone, in our bodies is sort of like the central support structure for our body. And like, in the last few years, mine has been bugging me a little bit more, probably because I'm overweight, but part of it's because it's getting misaligned. There's some misalignment there. And what happens is I start to, get a little agitated and start losing sleep and I become irritable and becomes painful and all this stuff. And then I go to the chiropractor. They're like, well, you're out of alignment. you're out of alignment. So we need to crack it back in and do some therapy and do some things. And then it starts feeling better. And I feel like that's what happens with our happiness, is that when we are misaligned, right? When we are doing things, being asked to do things in our job, or we're running things in our small businesses that aren't really aligned with who we are, it's that same sort of thing. It starts with just a little bit of chronic discomfort. But if we don't address it, if we don't get it realigned, we start losing sleep. We start getting stressed. We become irritable. We become
Yeah.
unhappy. And so to me, that's a really good analogy. And so it's all about that alignment, but it starts with, clearly identifying who you are and then intentionally moving those things into alignment.
I think that's one of the things that I really love about entrepreneurship and business ownership is I think we have so much more control over being happy than we would if we were working for somebody else, because there's only so many things you can do when you're working for somebody else.
Right.
If you don't like it, you got to go find another job. But in business, we can make changes within our business to help align with what we want and what's going to make us happy. So I don't know. That's just my thought on it.
No,
But
I think that's so good, because I think that's, we have more control than we realize. I
yeah,
think because we make so many decisions by default, or what we should do, or what other people's expectations are of us, we don't realize we have more control than we realize, especially as small business owners, really in every area of life. Like, I can choose who I want to hang out with
yep,
more than I realize. Like, we just think, well, these are the people I'm kind of stuck with. No, you can move people away and you can bring people in. Like, and you can, this business thing, like I'm going through this right now with my business. Like, I kind of went down a road listening to the experts of what I should do. And I'm like, this isn't who I am. You know what? I might be
yeah,
more successful doing that. That's just not who I am. And I could just say, well, that's what the experts tell me to do. Or I can say, you know what? No, this is the reason I left the corporate world, is so that I could have the kind of business that I really wanted, to help the kind of people I really want to help. And I'm going to do this. And you might say it's ridiculous, but it's going to be true and authentic to who I am. And it's going to make me happy. And I have that control. People might think I'm crazy,
yeah.
but I'm going to have to be okay with that, because this is what I want. I want to be authentically happy.
I was in a business group for a while, and one of the core beliefs behind that group was that you make your own business rules, and
Hmm.
that's always stuck with me. Because it's like, well, should I do this? Well, you make your own business rules,
You tell
so
me. Right.
yeah, you tell me.
Yeah.
We have a lot more control, and just because I think a lot of times we get this monkey on our back where we're like, well, gosh, I can't do that, can I? But well, no, yeah, you can. Just because other people say you can't doesn't mean you can't. So if that's what's going to make you happy and get your business to where you want it to be, then by all means,
Do it.
do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that. Make your own rules.
yeah. So, Steve, this has been fantastic, man. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your thoughts with us on happiness. Any last minute thoughts you want to leave us with?
Man, it's always, man, it's a great conversation. I want to hear more about your business and what you got going on. But as far as what I want to share, no, I would say just keep getting more and more clear. Like you said, it might be an ongoing process for you, but clearly identify. It's just like setting your vision for your business, right? Where are you trying to go? Do the same thing for yourself. Get a clear vision for the kind of life that you want to live, that's congruent with who you really are. And if you want some outside help, I'm happy to be of assistance to that. I do a free consultation, so you can get a hold of me. I see the website, go on smallbusiness.com, sign up for the free 30-minute deal. But no, I mean, just check out those websites if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn. But I would say it's, for many years I'll say this, probably 10 years ago, if I had heard myself talking like this today, I would have been rolling my eyes. I would have been like, oh my God, seriously, just go to work. Just grab your lunch pail, go to work, put in your 8 to 5 and come home, have a beer and watch the game. Like,
Yeah,
happiness is an illusion. I probably would have told you 10 years ago. And so there might be people listening to this, even that, or maybe they've already shut off, but if they're listening to this still, they might be kind of like, rolling my eyes a little bit, like, whatever, dude, just go to work. If that's you that's listening, I want to encourage you, rethink it. Because I've rethought it, and I wish I would have gotten my head on straight 25 years ago, that I could actually be happier in my job. I could be happier in my business. And there are some real things that you can do. So I just want to encourage people, don't just, if it's sort of tugging at you that, man, I'd love to be happier, but it seems impossible. Here's your chance. Set yourself up for future happiness.
Steve, thank you so much. Those of you watching, listening, you can go to stevefredlund.com, which is where your speaking stuff is, correct?
Right.
Or you can go to smallbusiness.com, where Steve has his coaching and consulting services laid out there as well. So this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you, Steve. I really do appreciate it. Again, guys, I am Tim Fitzpatrick with Rialto Marketing. If if you want to see consistent, repeatable results with your marketing, you got to have a plan. Everything starts with a plan. There is no perfect plan, but you got to start with a plan. So if you want to put your marketing plan together in minutes rather than hours or days, head on over to growthmarketingplan.com. That's growthmarketingplan.com. Our 90-day marketing plan toolkit is there. You can download it, all the resources, the templates, the 90-day plan template that we use is there. Everything you need, growthmarketingplan.com. Or you can always head on over to rialtomarketing.com, RIALTO marketing.com, and connect with us that way. So thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate you. And till next time, take care.